The training room hummed with the sound of combat simulations. Soldiers moved like well-oiled machines, their bodies twisting and turning through holographic battle scenarios. Laser blasts flickered. Simulated explosions painted the walls with bursts of orange and red. Everyone moved with purpose, except for one person. Una Park sat alone at a small computer station, her fingers dancing across a transparent data screen. While other recruits practiced martial arts and weapon handling, she was lost in a world of numbers, patterns, and complex algorithms. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, her eyes never leaving the intricate web of data spinning around her virtual workspace. Commander Jae-hwa Kim watched her from across the room. He had seen many recruits come and go, but Una was different. Where others saw a skinny young woman who looked more like a university researcher than a soldier, he saw something unique. Her file was extraordinary. Top marks in computational systems, advanced degrees in xenolinguistics, and multiple research papers that had caught the attention of military strategists. But this was war preparation, and war demanded soldiers who could fight, not just think. Park. His voice cut through the noise of the training room. Several heads turned, but Una barely looked up from her screen. She raised one finger, signaling she needed a moment to complete something. Most soldiers would have jumped immediately at a commander's call. Not Una. She finished her calculation, saved her work, and then slowly turned to face him. "Yes, Commander." Her voice was calm, almost too calm for the intense environment around her. Jae-hwa walked over, his military boots making sharp sounds against the metal floor. Up close, the difference between Una and the other recruits was even more apparent. They were muscular, battle-ready. She was lean, her strength clearly mental rather than physical. "Your latest simulation analysis," he said, dropping a digital tablet on her desk. "You've identified 237 potential communication breakdown points in our current military communication networks." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Una nodded. "The human communication protocols have inherent weaknesses. Our current systems are too linear, too predictable. An advanced opponent could exploit these gaps within minutes." Her words hung in the air. The other soldiers continued their training, but a few had stopped to listen. Some looked confused. Others looked annoyed. Who was this woman to criticize their systems? Jae-hwa studied her. Most recruits would have been nervous under his intense gaze. Una met his eyes directly, her expression neutral but confident. "We're preparing for potential first contact scenarios," he said. "The research suggests we might encounter intelligent alien civilizations within the next decade. Our military needs to be ready." "Ready isn't about how many weapons we have," Una responded. "It's about understanding. Communication. Prediction." A slight smile crossed Jae-hwa's face. Most would have argued. Most would have tried to prove their physical capabilities. But Una Park was thinking 3 steps ahead always. Outside the training room, massive view screens showed star maps and potential invasion routes. Distant planets flickered like tiny blue and green lights. Somewhere out there, something was waiting. Something that humanity might not be prepared to meet. And in this room, surrounded by soldiers training to fight with their bodies, Una Park was preparing to fight with her mind. The first warning came as a whisper, a tiny blip on a distant sensor. Then another, and another. Alarms erupted across the New Horizons station. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in a harsh, angry glow. Una's hands were already moving across her control panel before the first official announcement broke through the station's communication system. "Unidentified vessels approaching." A mechanical voice stated. "Multiple contact points." Speed. Impossible. Impossible was right. The objects were moving faster than anything human technology could track. They weren't just fast. They were breaking every known law of physics. Una looked up at the massive holographic display. Hundreds of dark shapes were converging on human space stations and colonies. They looked like metal insects, but not quite metal, not quite alive. Something in between that made her skin crawl. These were the Krell. and they were nothing like anyone had predicted. Commander Jadwa Kim burst into the monitoring room. His face was pale, but his movements were sharp and controlled. "Report," he demanded. Yuna's fingers flew across her screen. "They're not following any known attack pattern. Each vessel is acting independently, but also connected, like a single brain controlling multiple bodies." The first attack came without warning. A human orbital station simply vanished. One moment it was there, a massive structure housing thousands of people. The next moment, nothing. Not even debris. Just empty space where something had existed seconds before. "That's impossible," a young technician whispered. His hands were shaking. But Yuna was already analyzing. She wasn't watching the destruction. She was studying how it happened. More stations fell. The Krell moved like a swarm of intelligent machines. They didn't waste energy. They didn't make mistakes. Each movement was calculated. Each strike was precise. Human defense fleets scrambled. Massive battleships launched thousands of missiles. Laser networks activated. But nothing seemed to matter. The Krell ships twisted and turned, avoiding entire barrages of weaponry, as if they could predict every single human movement before it happened. "They're learning," Yuna said quietly. "With each attack, they're understanding our systems better." Jaewa looked at her. "Can we stop them?" Yuna didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the data streams flooding her screens. The Krell weren't just attacking. They were collecting information, studying, adapting. Entire planetary defense networks collapsed within minutes. Colonies that had taken decades to build disappeared in seconds. The Krell didn't just destroy, they erased. "We need a different approach," Yuna muttered. Her mind was racing, connecting dots that nobody else could see. The room was silent except for the sound of alarms and falling data streams. Outside the station's massive windows, space itself seemed to be bleeding. Burning colonies, destroyed ships, the end of human expansion. But Yuna Park wasn't looking at the destruction. She was looking at the pattern. And in that pattern, she saw something nobody else could see. A weakness, a tiny, almost invisible crack in the perfect Krell invasion. Her fingers started moving, not to fight, not to destroy, but to understand. The dropship shook violently as it cut through the planet's angry atmosphere. Outside the small windows, burning landscapes stretched in every direction. Smoke mixed with strange purple clouds that seemed to pulse with an unnatural light. Yuna sat quietly among 6 other soldiers. They looked nothing like her. Each was massive, covered in powered combat armor that made them look more like walking tanks than humans. Their weapons were big. Their muscles were bigger. They checked and rechecked plasma rifles that could punch holes through starship hulls. She carried a small computer tablet and a standard-issue communication device. "We're dropping into Sector 9, announced Lieutenant Dong-Soo Park, the team leader. His voice was hard, like grinding metal. "Krell Forward Base is approximately 20 kilometers from our landing zone. Standard mission, gather intelligence, disrupt communications, get out alive." Nobody looked at Yuna. Nobody expected much from her. She was the team's technical specialist, which basically meant she was there to fix things if their equipment broke. The dropship lurched. Explosions echoed in the distance. 5 minutes to drop, a mechanical voice announced. Lieutenant Dong-Soo looked at Yuna. "Stay behind us. Stay safe. Do your job, and don't try to be a hero." Yuna nodded, but her eyes were already scanning data streams on her tablet. While everyone else prepared for a fight, she was preparing something else entirely. The drop was violent. The ship hit the ground so hard that Yuna's teeth rattled. Immediately, the combat team formed a defensive circle. Their powered armor made them look like walking mountains of metal and weapon systems. "Movement," shouted one soldier. Plasma rifles charged. The air filled with a high-pitched electrical hum. But no attack came. Instead, something stranger happened. The Krell didn't fight like any enemy humans had ever encountered. Their attack patterns were completely random. One moment, a dozen would attack from the left. The next moment, they would vanish. Then they would strike from above, below, everywhere, and nowhere. The human soldiers fought hard. Their training was perfect. Their weapons were powerful. But the Krell seemed to know exactly what they would do before they did it. Yuna watched, not the fighting. The data. While bullets and plasma bolts flew around her, she was tracking something else. Communication patterns. How the Krell units spoke to each other. How they shared information. "We're losing ground," Lieutenant Dong Su shouted. 3 soldiers were already down. Their powered armor smoking, broken. The Krell moved like liquid metal, like a single intelligence controlling multiple bodies. Each unit knew exactly what the others were doing. They anticipated every human movement. Yuna's tablet beeped. Something was different in the communication patterns, a tiny, almost invisible rhythm that repeated every 2.3 seconds. Most would have missed it, but Yuna saw everything. "I need direct access to their communication network," she said quietly. Lieutenant Dong Su laughed. "Right. And I need a magic wand." But Yuna was already working. While the battle raged around her, she was discovering something that would change everything. The Krell weren't just an enemy. They were a puzzle, and she was about to start solving it. The underground research bunker was cold and silent. Yuna sat alone, surrounded by dozens of screens showing complex data streams. Her fingers moved quickly, tracing patterns that nobody else could see. What she had discovered was both amazing and terrifying. The Krell weren't just a military force. They were a single massive brain. Each ship, each fighting unit, every single piece was connected like neurons in a giant living computer. They didn't just communicate. They thought as one. Most humans believed the Krell were unbeatable because of this. Yuna saw something different. Every system has a weakness. Every perfect machine has a flaw. She zoomed in on a tiny data pattern. Most people would have missed it. It was less than a microsecond long. A tiny moment of delay between one Krell unit's decision and another's response. "Got you," she whispered. The Krell's strength was their total connection. Every unit knew everything instantly. They could predict human movements because their collective intelligence processed information faster than any human brain could think. But connection also meant vulnerability. Yuna began building a special kind of computer virus, but this wasn't a normal virus. This was something different, a logical trap designed to break the Krell's perfect thinking system. She understood something critical. The Krell processed information through quantum neural networks. These networks worked by making billions of calculations every second. They compared every possible outcome instantly. But what if she could create a problem with no solution? A mathematical paradox so complex that it would force the entire Krell network to stop and think. Not just think. Get stuck. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Lines of code appeared faster than most people could read. Each line was carefully designed. Each command was a precision tool meant to inject pure logical confusion into the Krell's collective brain. Outside the bunker, the war continued. Human colonies fell. Entire planetary systems disappeared. The Krell moved like a perfect machine, destroying everything in their path. But machines can break. And Yuna was about to find the exact point of breaking. The virus took shape. It looked simple, just a few lines of code. But inside those lines was something extraordinary. A problem with no solution. A logical trap that would force the Krell to keep calculating forever. Like a computer trying to divide by zero. But much, much more complex. Lieutenant Dong Su walked in. "Any progress?" he asked. Yuna looked up. Her eyes were bright. Not with excitement. With total concentration. "I found how to stop them," she said simply. The lieutenant looked skeptical. He had seen countless plans fail. Watched entire battle strategies collapse against the Krell's perfect defense. It's not about fighting them, Yuna continued. It's about making them fight themselves. The virus was ready. One small piece of code that could potentially stop the most advanced alien invasion in human history. But someone would need to deliver it directly into the Krell's communication network. And that would require a sacrifice nobody had expected. The room went silent when Yuna explained her plan. 6 soldiers stared at her like she had lost her mind. Lieutenant Dongsu's face was a mix of anger and disbelief. "You want to do what?" he asked. Yuna repeated herself calmly. "I need to create a direct neural link with the Krell communication network. My virus will only work if it's injected directly into their system." The plan was crazy, completely impossible. The neural interface would likely kill whoever tried to use it. The human brain wasn't designed to connect with an alien intelligence that thought like a massive, living computer. "The neural feedback could destroy your mind," said Corporal Minho, the team's medical expert. "Best case, you'll be brain dead. Worst case, your consciousness gets trapped inside their network forever." Yuna didn't blink. "It's our only chance to stop them." The war room was filled with holographic maps showing how badly humans were losing. Red markers represented fallen colonies. Blue markers showed human fleet positions, what was left of them. The Krell had destroyed more than 60% of human-controlled space in less than 3 months. Lieutenant Dongsu walked closer to her. "Explain exactly how this would work." She brought up a complex diagram. Quantum neural pathways flickered on the screen. Lines of data danced between complex mathematical models. "Their network is like a living brain," Yuna explained. "Each unit is a neuron. They process information faster than anything we've ever seen. But that speed is also their weakness. I can create a logical trap, a series of calculations that will force their entire system to get stuck trying to solve an unsolvable problem." The soldiers looked at each other. This wasn't a normal battle plan. This was something else entirely. "How certain are you?" the lieutenant asked. 85% chance of total Krell network collapse," Yuna responded. 15% chance I die in the process. Those weren't bad odds. Not in a war where humanity was facing total extinction. The room was quiet. Everyone understood what she was offering. A chance to save everything. The price was her own life. Corporal Minho prepared the neural interface. It looked like a small metal cap with thousands of tiny needles. Each needle would connect directly to Yuna's brain, creating a bridge between human and Krell communication systems. "Last chance to change your mind," Lieutenant Dongsu said. Yuna smiled. It was the first time most of the soldiers had seen her smile. Not a happy smile, a determined one. "Some fights can't be won with muscles," she said. "Some fights are won with thinking." The neural interface looked like a strange metal crown. When they placed it on her head, Yuna didn't show any fear. Her breathing was steady. Her hands were calm. Outside, another human colony was probably being destroyed. Time was running out. "Ready," she said simply. The connection would either save humanity or end everything. And nobody in the room knew which would happen first. The moment the neural interface connected, Yuna's world exploded. Pain wasn't the right word. What she experienced was beyond pain. It was like her mind was being stretched across 1,000 different dimensions at once. The Krell network wasn't just a communication system. It was a living, breathing universe of information. Millions of data streams crashed into her consciousness. Each stream was a thought, a memory, a calculation happening faster than light. Lieutenant Dongsu watched the monitors. Yuna's body was perfectly still, but her brain was experiencing something no human had ever survived. "Neural connection stable," said Corporal Minho. His voice was tense. "But something's happening." Yuna saw everything and nothing. The Krell weren't just a military force. They were a single, massive intelligence. Each ship, each soldier, each tiny unit was just a piece of a giant, thinking machine. Her virus began to spread. At first, nothing seemed to change. The data streams continued their impossible dance. Calculations happened in milliseconds. The Krell continued their destruction across human space. But then, a tiny pause. Just a microsecond. So small that most would have missed it. The Krell's perfect system hit a problem it couldn't solve. A mathematical paradox buried deep in Yuna's virus. A logic trap that forced the entire network to stop and think. Her mind was the bridge. Her consciousness was the weapon. The pain was beyond anything a human could describe. It was like being pulled apart and put back together millions of times per second. Her brain was fighting a war inside an alien computer network. Lieutenant Dong Su watched the screens. Something was happening to the Krell ships outside. They were slowing down, just a little, but it was enough. Yuna's virus worked like a cancer in the Krell's perfect system. It didn't destroy. It confused. It created logical problems that the network couldn't solve. Her body began to change. The neural interface was doing something unexpected. Her skin started to look different. Tiny electronic patterns appeared and disappeared across her skin. "She's becoming part of the system," Corporal Minho whispered. The Krell ships in orbit began to drift. Their perfect coordination was breaking down. For the first time since the invasion began, human ships had a chance to fight back. Yuna's consciousness was everywhere and nowhere. She could see billions of calculations happening at once. She understood the Krell in a way no human had ever understood an alien intelligence. Her virus wasn't just a weapon. It was a message, a way of saying, "We are different. We think differently. We are not like you." Lieutenant Dong Su gripped the control panel. "Come back," he said quietly. "Come back to us." But Yuna was lost in a world of pure information, fighting a war nobody else could see, using her mind as the most powerful weapon humanity had ever created. The Krell network began to break. Slowly, painfully, one impossible calculation at a time. Across the galaxy, something impossible was happening. The Krell ships stopped moving. Not all at once. Not in a simple way. They began to drift like confused children, losing the perfect coordination that had made them so terrifying. In the command center of New Horizons Station, screens filled with unbelievable data. Entire Krell battle groups were becoming useless. Their ships that had destroyed hundreds of human colonies now moved without purpose. "What's happening?" Commander Jawa Kim asked. The technicians had no answer. But something was breaking the Krell's perfect system. On the neural interface platform, Yuna Park's body was changing. Her skin looked different. Electronic patterns moved under her skin like living maps. Her brain was doing something no human brain had ever done before. She was fighting, but not with weapons, with pure thought. The Krell had believed their system was perfect. Each ship, each fighting unit, they were connected like neurons in a massive living computer. They could predict every human movement. They could destroy entire planets in minutes. But they had never met someone like Yuna. Her virus wasn't just a weapon. It was a message, a way of showing that human thinking could be different. That creativity could beat pure calculation. Across different star systems, Krell ships began to malfunction. Some simply stopped. Some started moving in circles. Some began shooting at each other. Their perfect network was breaking. Lieutenant Dong Su watched the screens. Tears were in his eyes. For the first time in months, human ships had a chance. The Krell weren't unstoppable anymore. "She's doing it," he whispered. Corporal Minho checked Yuna's vital signs. Her brain was working in ways no medical scanner could understand. She was part human, part something else. The virus spread through the Krell network like a strange disease. It didn't destroy. It confused. It created logical problems that the alien intelligence couldn't solve. Entire Krell battle groups became useless. Massive ships that had destroyed human colonies now drifted like lost children. Their perfect connection was breaking. Humanity watched in shock. The most advanced alien invasion in human history was falling apart. Not because of powerful weapons, not because of strong soldiers, but because of one person who thought differently. Yuna had found the weakness in the Krell's perfect system. Their strength, their total connection, was also their biggest problem. By creating a logical trap, she had forced their entire network to stop and think. And thinking, for the Krell, was now impossible. More ships stopped. More battle groups became confused. The invasion that had seemed unstoppable was now falling apart. In the command center, Commander Kim looked at the screens. Humans had a chance now. A real chance to fight back. And it was all because of one person who didn't fight like a soldier, who fought like a thinker. Unipark had changed everything. The medical ward was quiet. Too quiet. Unipark lay on a special bed surrounded by machines that nobody fully understood. Her body had changed, not just her mind. Her actual physical form looked different from when she first connected to the Krell network. Electronic patterns moved under her skin like living maps. Her eyes, when they occasionally opened, seemed to see things that weren't really there. Or maybe they saw everything. Commander Jae-hwa Kim sat beside her bed. He had seen many soldiers, many heroes. But Yuna was something else entirely. What happened to her? He asked Corporal Minho. The medical expert shook his head. Her brain is different now. She's part human, part something else. The neural interface did more than we expected. Doctors had run thousands of tests. Her brain worked in ways no scanner could completely understand. She had survived something that should have killed her instantly. Not just survived. She had changed the entire course of human history. The military wanted to study her, to understand how she had defeated the Krell. But she was more than just a weapon now. She was a bridge between human and alien intelligence. Lieutenant Dong-Su visited her room. The tough soldier looked different, softer. He had watched her save humanity, not with strength, but with pure thinking. The Krell invasion is over, he told her, even though she might not be listening. We won because of you. Across human space, the story was spreading. How one person had stopped an impossible alien invasion. Not with guns, not with powerful weapons, but with a computer virus and pure human creativity. Yuna had shown something important. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in muscles. It was in the ability to think differently, to solve problems that seemed impossible. The medical machines beeped. Sometimes Yuna's fingers would move. Sometimes her eyes would open and look at something nobody else could see. She's processing, Corporal Minho would say. Her mind is still connected to something we don't understand. Military leaders came to see her. Scientists studied her. But nobody really knew what had happened during those moments when she connected with the Krell network. Her body had electronic patterns now. Tiny circuits that moved like living things under her skin. Her brain worked differently. She could see connections that no other human could see. I'm not sure she's fully human anymore, Corporal Minho whispered to Commander Kim. But she was something better. She was a bridge, a way of showing that intelligence could be more than just fighting, more than just destruction. Outside the medical ward, human ships were cleaning up the last of the Krell invasion. Entire star systems were being reclaimed. Colonies that had been destroyed were starting to rebuild. And in the middle of it all, Unipark lay quietly, dreaming, thinking, connecting. She had saved humanity, not by being the strongest, but by being the smartest. 10 years after the Krell invasion, everything had changed. Military academies around the world looked different. No longer were they just places to train soldiers. They had become centers of thinking, of problem solving, of understanding. Unipark's name was everywhere, not as a traditional hero, but as a symbol of something new. The Human Strategy Institute stood as a massive building in the center of New Tokyo. Its walls were made of smart glass that changed colors based on the complex data streams flowing through its systems. Inside, young recruits learned something revolutionary. War wasn't about who had the biggest weapons anymore. War was about understanding. Lieutenant Dong-Su, now a senior military trainer, stood in front of a new class of students. His hair was gray, but his eyes were still sharp. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed Yuna's original neural virus algorithm. Humanity's greatest weapon, he told the students, is not our strength. It's our ability to think differently. The students were different from soldiers of the past. Some were mathematicians. Some were computer experts. Some were artists. They understood that solving a conflict wasn't about fighting. It was about understanding. Yuna herself rarely made public appearances. After her transformation during the Krell invasion, she existed in a strange space between human and something else. Sometimes she would give lectures. Sometimes she would simply sit in her research facility, processing information that no other human could understand. Her body had changed. Electronic patterns still moved under her skin. Her brain worked in ways that scientists were still trying to understand. But she had become more than just a weapon. She was a bridge between different kinds of intelligence. "We don't fight enemies," she would sometimes say. "We solve problems." The military had completely redesigned its approach. No longer were soldiers just trained to use weapons. They were trained to think, to analyze, to find solutions that nobody else could see. Young recruits studied complex communication systems. They learned about alien psychology. They understood that every conflict had a solution, if you were willing to look deep enough. Commander Jae-hwa Kim, now a senior advisor, often spoke about that moment when Yuna had changed everything. How one person had shown that human creativity could beat pure calculation. "The Krell thought we were simple," he would tell audiences. "They didn't understand that our weakness was also our strength. We don't think in straight lines. We think in spirals, in circles, in ways that can't be predicted." Around the world, new training centers appeared, places where young people learned that solving a problem was more important than fighting. Yuna's original neural virus was studied in every military and science academy, not as a weapon, but as a way of thinking. The human race had learned something important. That intelligence wasn't about power. It was about understanding, about finding connections that nobody else could see. And it had all started with one person who refused to fight like everyone else, who fought smarter.